The shockwaves from Nick Saban's retirement continue to throw Ohio State and college football into a massive tizzy. The latest development, the Buckeyes have somehow landed a quarterback who has not visited for 2 years and was committed to Nick Saban and had signed with Nick Saban, Julian Sayin, now in the Ohio State class of 2024. That's Andy Bax from the other side of that screen. Tim May here to break it down. The 40-year vet, he's here as always. Fellas, of course, I'm Spencer Holbrook. Fellas, let's talk about it. Julian Sayin is in the Ohio State class. Whether you call him a transfer, whether you call him a recruit, he's in the class. He's from Carlsbad, California. The number one quarterback in the class, the top player in the state of California, the number 5 overall recruit in the 2024 cycle, a 5-star plus recruit according to On3. All of the accolades, the Elite 11 MVP according to On3, 7-on-7 champions from all over the country. Andy, I'm going to go to you first. What does this mean for Ohio State? Because it's kind of a lot to take in right now.
Yeah, well, I was talking to Matt Parker of Lettermen Row, along with Pete Nakos from On, both saying they were at the Elite 11 finals competition and they watched Julian Sayin, and they just felt like he was by far away the best quarterback there at that event. And the way he throws the football, his mechanics, he can layer passes. He's very rhythmic in his passing motion. There's a lot to like about him as a quarterback prospect. He also has a connection with Bill O'Brien. That's who he committed to, who was at Alabama at the time in 2022. Now, of course, Bill O'Brien is the new offensive coordinator at Ohio State. You have to like that connection if you're an Ohio State fan. Julian Sayin certainly likes that connection, choosing Ohio State to transfer to. But now there's 5 quarterbacks in this quarterback room going into winter workouts, spring practice, and you have to think, okay, well, they're not going to have 5 probably after spring season ends. So it's going to be a bit of a musical chairs situation going into the spring season, but a lot to like from that quarterback room, which is now very crowded.
Crazy. It's crazy in all kinds of ways. What doesn't make sense in one respect is why a guy would go to a room that's already crowded. What does make sense is that guy's going to that room because he thinks he might be the best guy in that room. Kind of like when Devin Brown, committed while Quinn Ewers was in that room, or maybe vice versa, whichever way you want to look at it. But yeah, this room picture, take a picture of it. It's not going to hold, but man, it's pretty magnificent looking as you look at it now. And Julian Sayin, it just, there were people. I'm glad we got up a video pretty quick on the Bill O'Brien situation last week, because there were a lot of people questioning the Bill O'Brien hiring. I'm not saying people who were necessarily credible, but people were questioning it, and you're kind of going, this guy, as we pointed out, has quite the resume, but then on top of it, evidently he can recruit a little bit, right? And it's just crazy to think that Julian Sayin is coming to a room that crowded on a roster that's now decked, stacked, and loaded. This is the most phenomenal. I keep saying this every time we do one of these videos. This is the most phenomenal January I've witnessed covering Ohio State now going on 5 decades. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think this signifies that Ohio State understands its moment in college football. Nick Saban has retired. That creates a vacuum of power in the sport, right? And so Kirby Smart automatically assumes that throne in the SEC, even though he just lost to Nick Saban in the SEC championship game. Georgia's the top dog, pardon the pun, in the SEC. And with Clemson kind of teetering on whether they're a superpower or not, Michigan having a dormant January as they watch their coach jet set around everywhere and find an NFL job if he can, and maybe reluctantly return to Michigan, Ohio State sees its moment. And I think that's very apparent here. The Buckeyes knew that Julian Sayin was interested in them, interested in Bill O'Brien the second that he was considering leaving Alabama. So what do? They hesitate a little bit, figure out, get all their ducks in a row, I guess you could say, to keep it the TLDR version of this is, they were getting their ducks in a row, making sure everything was okay. And then they said, okay, we're going to pursue Julian Sayin. You go out and get the number 1 quarterback in the country. And that's just what you do. When Justin Fields was in the portal, I know that he came in to be the 2019 starter, but this kind of is reminiscent of that. You had a couple guys in the room you weren't super sure about for your future, whether that be Devin Brown down the road, Lincoln Keenholz down the road. You don't know what you have in Aaron Nolan, but you also don't know what you have now in Julian Sayin. But more talent is better. And Ryan Day is showing a little bit of a cutthroat nature to himself that we have not seen from Ryan Day or this program maybe ever. And so I am ultra impressed with the way that Ohio State is aggressively attacking this all, but also the way that they're stockpiling talent in the quarterback room leads you to believe that one of these guys beyond Will Howard, because I think Will Howard's going to be the starter in 24, Andy, one of these guys in the future, they're going to get it right, and they'll have their star quarterback for the future because there's so many options at who that could be in 2025 and 2026.
It's an adjustment because Kyle McCord was Ryan Day's pick, and he stuck with him throughout the years, and eventually Kyle McCord got the shot. And I don't think he ended up being the quarterback that Ryan Day thought he might have been originally. And who knows, maybe Kyle McCord will go off at Syracuse next year. But the bottom line is they need more talent from that position. They're going out and getting more talent. First with Will Howard in the transfer portal, now Julian Sayin in the transfer portal, but basically a high school player coming in, the same class as Aaron Nolan. And by the way, don't just write off Aaron Nolan right now. I mean, these quarterbacks come in, these players, 5-star players come in with a lot of confidence, as they should. They believe in themselves. I wouldn't assume that Aaron Nolan is now leaving. I think Aaron Nolan, it's totally possible he sticks around for at least 1 year to try to compete with Julian Sayin. You know, he has confidence in his ability. The wide receivers, the 5-star wide receivers that committed to this class, Jeremiah Smith, Mylan Graham, have a lot of confidence in Aaron Nolan. That's part of the reason why they committed to Ohio State. Aaron Nolan is still a very talented quarterback. I would not write him off. I think that's going to be a great competition to come between Julian Sayin and Aaron Nolan, and it's probably going to benefit the both of them, regardless of who stays and who goes, because they're going to get better because they're going to push each other. And I think that's what Ryan Day believes. I think that's probably what Bill O'Brien believes. And that's what everyone believes in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center.
Yeah. What's going to be interesting is, Ryan Day and the former staff recruited Aaron Nolan. They thought, they thought he was the be all end all for their 2024 class. Obviously they recruited Devin Brown. Obviously they signed Lincoln Keno's at the last minute. I'm not sure they were sold on him early as they were late when they needed a quarterback in that class, in that 2023 class. But now Bill O'Brien, the quarterback coach, the new quarterback coach and offensive coordinator, is the reason, I would think, is the main reason Julian Sayin is coming to Ohio State. So it's going to be very interesting to maybe plant a bug in the coaches meeting room or in Ryan Day's office, which I think may be one and the same, and try to listen in on conversations of how they decide the pecking order coming out of spring and or going into spring. Of course, I'm being facetious about the planting the bug thing. We know that Ohio State doesn't do those kind of things, and neither do we. But the bottom line is this is going to be as interesting a spring as you've ever seen, because obviously Aaron Nolan, it was possible for Julian Sayin to be in the transfer portal because Nick Saban suddenly retired. You can't just jump into it now. You can say, well, I'm going to jump into it in April, but and maybe take the rest of the winter off. But the transfer portal isn't open for like Ohio State players the way I understand it at the moment. You just say, hey, well, I'm getting out of school and I'm going to get into it later. Bottom line is we're going to see this in the spring. It's going to be extremely cool. I hope we get to watch more than one practice warm-ups because I've never seen anything like this. And the bottom, and I just keep going back to this. When I tell people about how good players are coming out of high school, I go, watch Aaron Nolan's tape. It will wow you. Well, go watch Julian Sayin's tape. It will wow you. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's that's going to be the pun of the pun du jour for the next however many years.
I was saying it before it was cool.
Yeah, decides to be here in Columbus. It is remarkable, the talent. And now you look at the transfer portal class that Ohio State's brought in as we wrap up here. Just a quick reaction. We'll do more on Monday morning and have full coverage at lettermenrow.com. But the transfer portal class, Andy, now includes Caleb Downs, the #1 overall player in America in the transfer portal, a safety that's going to start for Ohio State. Seth McLaughlin, who's probably going to start for Ohio State at center or guard, depending on how the offensive line shakes out. Will Howard, who's probably going to start at Ohio State as the quarterback, the most important position on the field. Quinshon Judkins, a 2-time All-SEC running back. Will Kasmerick, who Ohio State sources have told me is going to play a huge role for the Buckeyes offense this year. And now Julian Sayin. You just keep adding to this offense. And that's not for now with Julian Sayin, but it's for the future. And this 2024 transfer portal class, you're going to look back on it and either remember it as the greatest bust in the history of college football because it's going to be so ballyhooed, as Tim likes to say, or it's going to be the catalyst for a 2024 run, a 2025 run with Sayin potentially and Caleb Downs still on the roster and into the future and vault Ohio State into the next era of the 12-team playoff, and Ohio State being a central player of that, Andy. It's remarkable what they're doing in the transfer portal right now.
Last year was kind of a sneak peek at what Ohio State could do in the transfer portal. Davison Igbinosun was the best get in the portal for them. He was a phenomenal player this year as a starter opposite Denzel Burke, played the most defensive snaps as anyone. Great run defender, great cornerback. But let's be honest, all the guys you just listed, at least 3 or 4 of them have more star power than Davison Igbinosun does. And that's not something to say against Davison Igbinosun. It's just to say, hey, they're taking it another step up. This is what they can really do in the transfer portal. They're bringing in 3 players from Alabama, a Kansas State quarterback who's won a conference title, and a MAC player who has proven that he can make a contribution, whether as an inline tight end or maybe as a secondary receiver at the tight end position. That is a lot for this offense. They needed to make upgrades. We talked about this when we talked about Bill O'Brien. This offense did not meet its standard at Ohio State. It did not meet the standard of being the best offense in the Big Ten. There is a lot to be said about what they're doing right now. That said, we need to see how it all shakes out. And that's what Tim said. The spring is going to be really interesting. Where do these pieces fall? Is this offensive line done its makeover? I don't think so. We're going to see a lot of different changes, and that's what's going to make this offseason so pivotal and so interesting.
I know one thing, man. Ryan Day backed into a corner. You can do one of 2 things when you're backed into a corner. You can surrender, or you can come out swinging and throwing haymakers. And Ryan Day has come out of this corner throwing haymakers. He and his staff, which is still probably not still totally revamped. Who knows? But he's revamped the staff. He's revamped the recruiting attitude about the transfer portal. The NIL collectives have come online big time now. They're pumping 100% octane, 110 octane through the transfer portal. And from a financial standpoint, it probably appears. But the bottom line is, like I said, Ryan Day's come out throwing haymakers, and I think it portends well for the future. Let me put it that way.
I completely agree, Tim. Julian Sayin, part of the Ohio State 2024 recruiting class or transfer portal class. I think maybe both. Either way you shake it, there is a lot of talent in the Ohio State quarterback room now and into the future. Will Howard, Devin Brown, Lincoln Keenholz, Aaron Nolan, and now Julian Sayin, the number 1 quarterback, according to On3, in America, is coming to Columbus from Alabama. Yeah. In the 2024
where
class.
else are there quarterbacks except Canada?
Well, he's
in
the
North
number
America.
1.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
He's the number 1 according to On3, and he's coming to Ohio State. That's
Yeah.
Andy Backstrom in the middle of your screen. That's Tim May, the 40-year vet on the other side of your screen. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the latest video presented by Lettermen Row. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow for another one of these breakdowns as we continue to talk about this stockpiling of talent. Until then, go to lettermenrow.com. Get your first month for $1, just $1. Your first month for $1 at lettermenrow.com. We'll see you guys over there.